let's get back to tennis, because I wanted to ask you to compare the problems athletes have to sports that are like tennis, golf, baseball, one-sided sports, to regular ball sports, which are also more or less one-sided, because soccer, you kick it with mostly with one foot. Basketball, if you are a 1 foot jumper, you jump. I was always a 1 foot jumper, so I had one-sided problems. Swimming is something that's more better alignment probably. But is there like, do you see certain problems that you have to deal with in one sport and not in the other?
I mean, you have always sport-specific compensation patterns. Like every sport has its own really movement patterns, which means like you will always have like certain muscle groups more activated in one sport than the other. Tennis obviously is like a insane swing. It's like an insane like um hit basically for the shoulder that goes into a completely different pattern than it is in basketball. At the end of the day, there was like a discussion and so many studies over the past decade, almost probably longer than that, about exactly that. And if or if not, you want to bring an athlete basically on if you want to zero them in, right? If you want to like trying to recompensate the compensation pattern, if that makes sense. And I hate to do that as long there is no problem, right? It always depends. I feel like every joint, every muscle should be just right in function, which is something you will know with like certain experience. At the same time, I don't want to bring them completely out of their movement patterns, because otherwise they won't hit a single free throw anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's just like muscle memory effect, and you just really have to be careful in how far you want to go into compensating those muscle memory effects and affecting the nervous system. So that's why, like for me, it's just like I deal with problems and of course prevent them in terms of checking the body holistically, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So explain like getting them loose, but not loose enough, basically.
Yeah. So for me,
Not
like,
too loose.
I mean, if you have a stiff midfoot, right? If you have a midfoot that doesn't move really well, going back to the feet again, which is my favorite topic, obviously, but like it's just like super important. So going back to the feet, if a player, and it doesn't matter what player, has like a complete stiff, immobile foot, I will eventually like mobilize it and just make sure everything is moving properly. Will I like as long as it's a perfect tone of the muscle, I won't like completely relax you, because like you won't be able to play the way you're supposed to anymore. So like if a tennis player, for example, will always use their pec, right? If I like massage or treat your shoulder for hours, it's not going to be beneficial unless you really have a severe issue. If you have the severe issue, it might be not really the pec, probably more or less your spine.
Okay. And what about volleyball?
Volleyball is the same thing. Like, I mean, volleyball is just like it just really applies to every sport to me. Like if I work with volleyball players, I just see, okay, what might be going on. If you have a certain issue where it might come in from, you will always have like some sort of like spine deformation, if I want to call it that way, like scoliosis or whatever. What every orthopedic is going to tell you, you have a scoliosis. Yeah, of course you have a scoliosis. You have a strong side in your body. You will get insoles from that orthopedic that oftentimes are completely false, just because they tell you one leg is shorter than the other, but like don't really apply that to the whole body, right? Like they just barely ever do the right measurements, and it just like presses you even more into the compensation, and at the end of the day oftentimes causes the actual problem.
Is there an injury that's like devastating that you would say that's the hardest to recuperate from? And
definitely Achilles tendon.
Achilles, huh?
Like I feel I gotta go with Achilles every day, all day, just because it's like such a difficult injury to come back mentally from. Physically, I mean, if you have the right tools, if you have the right team surrounding you as a player, you will eventually come back. Mentally is the biggest part, because you really got to trust that part again, which is just another reason why I would never work without a mental trainer like Reiner on a client like that. Just because you just like, that's the most important thing, right? You get injured, all right, first day of recovery, what we gonna do? Like, what's the team surrounding you? What we gonna do? Nutrition, treatment, mental health. That's all factors that playing in. And later on, of course, the training part.
Again, holistic approach to the recovery as well.
Super important. And I feel like nowadays still not important enough in a lot of teams, just because, I mean, you want your player to hit the court with full confidence into his body, right? You want the player to hit the court with almost 0% to re-injure himself.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Wearing a sleeve or something like that, is that because if it helps you mentally, is that supportive, or is that counterproductive in the end, because maybe there's something that's happening physiology that I can't explain?
Yeah. So my part is like, what do those things do, right? They like compress your body a little bit, which is mostly what fascia is doing. Like muscle fascia is mostly like a net surrounding your muscle that is supposed to stabilize the muscle. So like if you are necessarily have to wear this like sleeve, whatever it is, compression shorts, whatever it is, it's always the question, like, do you just have weak fascia, or do you just feel cool, or what's the reason why you want to wear it? At the first time, like right after an injury, I completely support you to wear it, but like in longevity of it, you should get rid of it if your fascia is healthy and if you have a good interactive system.
Does it prevent, let's say I put it on my knees, because I had it on my knee, and does that prevent from does the sleeve prevent the fascia from working properly?
I mean, it's like everything, right? If you trying to support a house from falling, it eventually won't fall, but like the house is like a passive structure. Now you have a passive structure in terms of muscle and fascia. So if you want to activate it and just learn and teach it how to prevent injuries and how to help you, it will be way more beneficial than wearing any kind of sleeve. So for me, like even the guys with like those knee braces, right? Those typical knee braces that every German and maybe Lithuanian kid gets in Europe to like help you with your Osgood-Schlutter, which is like in the most cases not even an Osgood-Schlutter in my point of view, but let's say a runner's knee or whatever. It supports your knee passively to not do the work actively, which goes back to me that this guy likely will need training to help him better, like, you know, compensate those problems really. Like
strength.
It's like the typical pill, right? It's the Band-Aid therapy. Like you have something, put a Band-Aid on. You have headache, take a pill. Like that's just like the kind of therapy it is, but it's not necessarily like a long-term solution in my point of view.
Not a healing. It doesn't support the healing process.
Right.